Sean. I'm ready in 3, 2. All right, welcome to this week's meeting of the Board of Directors. This is a joint Board of Directors and Fiscal Committee meeting. I'd like to welcome Finance Committee folks and say I'm sorry that you're going through this twice now, but it's good to see you here with us. Going to hold opening remarks short today and just get right into the agenda if no one minds.
Mr. President, I move adoption of the agenda for the June 26, 2025 meeting that was published in our materials.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous of all in attendance. Thank you. Member comments. Brittany. Do we have anyone signed up today?
We do not have anyone signed up this evening to speak for member comments, but if there's anyone in the room who'd like to make a member comment or on Zoom, please raise your hand or walk to the podium.
Doesn't look like anybody. All right. Moving on to the consent calendar. I've got the June 12th board work session meeting minutes and the legal committee recommendations for May, June of 2025. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Mr. President, do we actually have legal committee recommendations?
Mm-hmm.
We do.
Okay. I had earlier seen some correspondence that said we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not for June, but for May. We canceled the June meeting. Okay.
Oh,
Was
it's on the agenda. It said canceled, no recommendation. If you look at the agenda sheet,
Dropbox had stuff in it.
June's legal committee was canceled, so June's legal committee recommendations are not there, but May's is.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the materials I was sent.
I appreciate that. The motion was made. Was it seconded?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
I said so moved.
She said so moved. Who seconded?
Does somebody want a second?
Do we have a second for the consent calendar?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous of all in attendance. Thank you. Volunteer interviews. I think we've got one gentleman here. Brittany, would you like to introduce him?
Yes, we have Greg McKinless.
Hello, everyone. My name is Greg McCandless. I'm an original
Can you get closer to
Restonian.
the microphone?
Closer?
Yeah.
There you go, Travis.
Thank you.
I'm an original Restonian. Grew up off of Lawyers Road. Love Reston. Love what Robert Simon envisioned. Love the whole live, work, and play. I was retired after 20 years of work at Sprint, right on the other side of Sunrise Valley and Fairfax County Parkway. I haven't been in an environment like this in quite some time since I used to sell mobile data internet to law enforcement agencies in the area. So when they're in their police cars, they can run your license plate searches from behind. So it was a lucrative business back then. As everyone knows, T-Mobile bought Sprint, so that ended. And now I live on the other side of the road off Sunrise Valley near the Westin and the Sheridan. So I live at the Mercer condominiums. I'm on the board of directors there. I'm a member at large. They had 3 open seats at the election last year, and I won with the most votes. So I got the 3-year term. I recently got my CMCA certification. When I moved into the Mercer, I saw that the quality of service in the building was declining a little bit. And one day we were going through property managers a lot. And so one day I decided to join the property management team and become the general manager for the building I lived in. Did that for 2 years. I stepped aside to that back to retirement. And I love getting your emails at 8 o'clock every Friday. And a couple months ago, I saw that there was a volunteer position open for the covenants. And that's where it all started. I'd like to give back to the city that gave the town that gave so much to me. So I'd be happy to be the next member of the Covenants Committee if the board would introduce that. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. McCandless? Director Farrell.
Thank you for volunteering.
Sir.
There has been an observed phenomenon that we're pretty aggressive in enforcing the covenants against individual homeowners. But it appears that we're not quite so aggressive in enforcing them against commercial property owners. Do you think that commercial property owners should be held as vigorous a standard as we do to homeowners?
I think to answer that question, I didn't get your name.
I'm John Farrell.
John, Greg. That name sounds familiar. We used to have the pizza and ice cream place, Farrell's. I don't know if you remember that.
I have a picture.
Oh, you do? Yeah, good. Good.
Tyson's,
no
yeah.
relations, right? Okay.
Right.
Really, John, what it comes down to, though, is I'd be new to the committee. I'm sure there's a lot of members that have been on there for some time. So I always like to learn by example, so to speak, and just see what the board, how aggressive the board wants to do. I'm a very highly ethical individual, so I would not determine between commercial and residential. To me, a rule is a rule, and it should be followed the same. So I think that's the best. The word aggressive just depends on the direction of the board of directors then on how aggressive you want to be. You tell me or us to be aggressive, then that's what we need to do, follow what the board says.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Thanks very much for your time. Thanks for volunteering, and you'll hear from us. It'll be after executive session. Knowing the way things go, I would hold off until tomorrow morning, so.
8 o'clock. Great. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Moving on to item F.
Oh, we still have one more.
Oh, do we still have
Yes.
another interview? Oh, Ms. Hoffman, yes.
Dorothy Hoffman, you've been asked to unmute.
Thank you. Hi, Dorothy.
Ms. Hoffman, it doesn't seem like we are able to hear you in the room.
Can I actually on mute again?
You're still muted.
Yeah.
Ms. Hoffman, and you've been asked to unmute. We still cannot hear you in the room.
Ms. Hoffman, I appreciate you being online, but while you deal with your technical difficulties, how about we proceed with the agenda? Yes, but, yeah, but she still hasn't been able to say anything.
Oh.
While you deal with your technical difficulties, we'll move on with the agenda. Feel free to chat and let Brittany know when you're sorted out, and we will bring you in as we can. All right. We're going to move on to CEO update. So, Mac, it's yours.
Thank you. I'll be brief. There's a couple of really administrative items in there, but the one I wanted to draw everybody's attention to, I would say, had great success, and I think the board saw success in the pool assessment work that we did earlier in the year. You may recall at the last joint fiscal board meeting, there was a lot of discussion on could we get going earlier and do more pool assessment work this year rather than hold off till next year, which was originally going to be a staff proposal. We believe we can get that work done, and I'm prepared to go spend and get that going. It's within the CEO procurement limit, but I wanted to bring to the board's attention, I thought I heard overwhelming support for that concept, but it is an unbudgeted expense. I believe we probably will have some savings, but I just wanted to bring that here as an administrative update item because we did not budget for that particular money this year. And I'll check back in with Ed on forecasting later on as we get closer to the end of the year, if this affects all that.
Hello?
Dr. Fair?
From time to time, we have had a conversation about the fact that there are a number of items that the board has wanted to pursue, and there's been a suggestion that we need to get that list in order to try and calendar those items that have been pending, and I, between Director Sansa and others, I believe we're up to maybe a half a dozen or a dozen such items, and I'm wondering, before the next board meeting, can we get that list so we can start trying to schedule these things?
Do you want me to answer that? So, John, Dr. Farrell, I've had a conversation with Mac about that very recently, and what we'd like to do is bring that list in to a working group that we've chatted about a little bit, that's going to be responsible for developing the agenda. So we'll have that full list, and when that working group gets a list, so we'll distribute it to the entire board. So that will be before the next meeting.
My object here was to have the entire board have a copy of the list, not just a small group.
Yep.
And so that we can, if board members feel like they want to move something forward or move something back, that we have the opportunity to get that input before we come back to the next board meeting.
What I'd like to do is get that out to the membership before the working group meets, so then the working group can take any suggestions that are given to us, and we can compile them into the next agenda.
We're of the same mind.
Cool.
Okay. Can I ask a qualifying question? I thought I understood the ask to be which are deferred items that you just don't see, coming in out meetings that are like a parking lot, like a list of a series of things. Is the ask to create agendas like between now and pick a month?
No.
Okay, so we're not actually creating agendas. We're just saying these are topics that may come up at future meetings.
These are topics that we'll use to pluck from to create our agenda.
Okay.
Where we have had it before and we didn't act. So it's open items that the board has discussed that we didn't dispose of, so that we can get a sense of, as an example, do we need to have a special meeting in order to catch up?
And there might be items that we can pull off the list that have become OBE, so.
And along those lines, Mr. President, that also would be something we would look at in combination with the Secretary's report, so that we can see what open items there are and pursue those and bring them back onto the agenda.
I would think
so
so.
that we can catch up with all the things that have been pending, in some cases for 18 months.
I would think so. Do you have anything else, Mike? All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to item G, capitalization threshold increase.
Mr. President, I have a motion.
Yes, sir.
I'll read it. It's similar to what was in the board package. I move to instruct staff to cap all individual items in the CIP at a minimum threshold of $25,000, and to further instruct staff to bundle items below that threshold into one or more budgetary items that reflect the total value of the entirety of the items included in each such budget item.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second to open any further discussion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Comments, please.
Speaking to the motion,
Please.
this is basically what the staff recommended to us that's in our package. The only thing, the change I made was to say it doesn't have to be all in one budget item. So there might be a budget item for copiers. Okay, fine. There might be a budget item for pool furniture. Okay, fine. So it's not, the way it was originally drafted was there would be one catch-all, and I'm trying not to hamstring the staff, so that if they want to bring multiple items that hoover up the items that are less than 25,000, they're free to do that.
Dr. Mullins?
If I could get staff's reaction to the motion that's been made?
It was our recommended motion. I mean, there was a slight tweak to it, and I agree with Director Farrell's tweak to it. It's fine with us.
Okay.
Okay. Any further Mr. Petrine?
I'd just like to remind everybody that just because it's not in the capital budget, it's still going to be expense. So it depends on which pocket you're taking the money out of. And in this case, it all flows through the budget. So I agree with staff. I just want to remind everybody, things don't go away just because they're pushed from one category to another. The money's still going to be spent.
Okay. Open one more time for comments. Brittany, did you have something? Okay. All right. All in favor? Unanimous of all in attendance.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Vroom, did you have anything else you wanted to add? No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
Oh, great. Ms. Hoffman. Or Ms. Hoffman's iPad.
Still can't hear.
We still can't hear you. Give her another minute.
Yeah, she's still having the same issue, I think.
Okay. We'll just give her another minute just in case. Motion is,
Screen is showing that she's unmuted, but she's not sure what's happening.
yeah, she doesn't look like she's on mute. But it's okay. Ms. Hoffman, I appreciate your attempts to come out.
We can give her 5 minutes to try to log on to the computer.
Give it a try again, and we'll still be here. Thank you very much.
Maybe. Mr. President, I wanted to, I should have pointed this out when we were disposing of that unanimous motion. With the passage of that motion, the budget suggestion number 36 that we had deferred until action on this motion
No longer.
can now pass, can now, be passed over.
Awesome.
And no further action on that item number 36.
What was 36? What was item 36?
What was item 36?
It's not in here.
You got it?
It's not in this packet. It's in the last week, or last meeting's
you
packet.
know?
I don't have that with me either. That wasn't for tonight's discussion, but I'll follow up, and I understand what he means.
Okay.
Oh, it is in the, it's referenced in the minutes.
This is budget suggestion 36, add an oversized umbrella to the north side of Glade Pool.
Right. And that can go away because now it can be folded into something else.
You're going to fold the umbrella, huh, John? All
What you
right.
did there.
Yeah, we saw that. One other follow-on, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
In looking at the minutes of the last meeting, I'm looking at page 4 of the minutes. It seems that we passed this, we adopted a substitute motion. That motion passed, but we never took final action on the motion itself. And we probably need to deal with that. That was on item 27. So I don't know if you want to do it tonight or next time, but if you look at on page 4 of the minutes, we didn't take final action. We adopted the substitute, but we didn't act on it.
Let's take the time over the course of the meeting to get brought back up to speed on what item 27 is, and then wrap it up at the end.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right. We are moving on to item H, Assessments and Finance Resolution 6, Investments. Back to Mr. Vroom.
Okay, Kara, if I could ask to please bring up those slides that I had sent you. There was some information in the packet, but we are also going to show a couple slides here, 2 that were included in the recording of the kind of actuals and forecasts that I had done, and then a couple other slides to try and help sort of paint the picture and maybe allay some of the concerns that were brought up in the last meeting. The first slide here is the balance sheet. This is one of the ones that was in the recorded packet. And just to point out that we kind of have 2 categories that are being invested by RAFA. what's called the RAFA investment account line, which is really the RRF fund. That's the portion of RRF that's with RAFA. The line 2 above that that just says RRF, that's actually with Truist. That's kind of for the current year spending of RRF, and that stays in the bank. So we kind of have that RAFA investment account that's with RAFA. And then the stream CAT fund is kind of the stream wetland related catastrophic fund. And, you know, between the two of those, you got the 4.3 in the RRF and, you know, almost 1.5 in the stream CAT fund. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about what's with RAFA. And my note over on the right there, I know it's a little hard to see here, but it says, you know, the RAFA accounts were up versus last year and up versus year end of last year for both the RRF and the stream wetland CAT fund. So, you know, we're doing fine on that amount of money. And if we could go to the next slide. Well, while we're getting there, so this is just to show the financial assets of Reston Association, the organization, on a month-by-month basis last year. And this is something I had already pulled together internally as we kind of look at our cash flow and make sure that we are going to have enough money as we go throughout the year. And we're tracking very similar in 2025, but these are the 2024 numbers. But really the point of this is that 72% of RA's financial assets are in the bank and with Truist. 28% are with RAFA, and 7% of that is the Stream Wetlands CAT Fund. So where we were talking about potentially switching the investment mix of the CAT Fund, you know, it's really about 7% of our overall funds that we're talking about. So, you know, it's not an insignificant amount of money, but it's not like a huge portion of the organization's assets. So that's kind of the only point of that slide. And then if we could move to the next one, this is another one that was included in the packet, kind of the normal monthly, you know, actuals and forecasts, but this is looking at the revenues. And the items I highlighted there are related to the interest and dividends. And just to give you a little information about really how well we're doing on the interest and dividends. So this is primarily the money that we have with Truist. There is a little bit of interest and dividends we get from the RAFA account as well. But, you know, it's hard to see, but we're tracking 62K above budget year to date and 105K over last year through May. So really, we've grown our interest revenue significantly. It was $152,000 in 2022, and we're forecasting it to be $571,000 this year. So, you know, a very significant increase, and that's with no additional risk. I mean, we've just been better about managing our funds and keeping them in higher earning accounts, moving more from savings and checking into higher earning money market accounts. And we actually now have laddered T-bills, treasury bills, where when we kind of have a lot of money at the beginning of the year, we have extra money, we put it into these laddered T-bills that mature a little bit in May, a little bit in June, a little bit in July, et cetera, so we can pull that back in as we need to spend down the cash throughout the year. So kind of the point is just, you know, we're doing very well with our investments, you know, on the banking side, still doing fine on the RAFA side as well. And then the last slide, didn't want to take up too much time, just wanted to give a little more information and then happy to answer questions. But, you know, RAFA and nonprofit investing in general was brought up. And I didn't have this information in time for the packet, but I've been doing some research and I got with our RAFA points of contact. And just to let you know, I mean, RAFA was created in 2005 specifically to serve the investment and fiduciary needs of nonprofits and associations. That's really all they work with is nonprofits and associations. They have 140 clients, 1.6 billion in assets under advisement, which averages out about a little over 11 million per client, and we have about half that. You know, we have a little less than 6 million with RAFA. And, you know, there were questions asked about, you know, what are other nonprofits doing with their investments? So turns out, I didn't know this, but RAFA had launched something called the Study of Nonprofit Investing back in 2012. And, you know, they've been collecting responses from various nonprofits and associations. And based on, you know, 214 responses, the average kind of allocation for investments in the 2 to 10 million range, you know, it's 53% equities or stocks, 31% fixed income bonds, a little bit in cash and a little bit in alternatives. And then for less than 2 million invested, just some other percentages, 65% equities, 20% fixed income, et cetera. So it kind of just gives you a little bit of an idea what other nonprofits are doing, and we're kind of in that same ballpark. We follow Resolution 6 and currently invest 60% in equities and 40% in fixed income for the RRF fund, and we're currently doing 40% equities and 60% fixed income for the CAP fund. Although, we recently discovered, as I talked about in a previous meeting, how the WSSI agreement, which to Director Flashman's question, I didn't know the answer last time we talked, but I looked back and was also signed by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality and the Army Corps of Engineers. It does require the CAP fund to be invested 80% equities and 20% fixed income. And, the last point is just as a reminder, this is for not just all catastrophes that might hit RA. This is specific to streams and wetlands and the WSSI agreement. And again, it's, roughly 7% of our overall assets. So, I don't think there's a big reason to be concerned, but as I put in the memo in the packet, I don't think there's a big urgency either. So there was a motion last meeting for two things. One, for us to renegotiate the WSSI agreement to try and change that investment mix requirement, but we would have to work that with WSSI and the Army Corps and Virginia DEQ, so that may be challenging. But also, the other part of the motion was to switch the CAP fund for now to that 80-20 requirement. But what I was suggesting in the memo was, I think we can hold off on both things right now for a little bit. I don't think there's a huge urgency, and there was no specific deadline on that motion. It was just kind of a motion to do that. But my suggestion is that allow staff a little more time to research this, get back with the fiscal committee, and the fiscal committee already wanted to look at Resolution 6 on investments and make other changes as well. So let us, work that with the fiscal committee a little bit and then bring it back to the board with the recommendation and, kind of go from there. So that's the recommendation. Along with one other thing is there's what's called the risk tolerance survey. You may recall that's been done over the years, every few years. The last one that was done was in June of 2021. So it is time to do that. The fiscal committee was talking about that early this year in like March, April timeframe when we had Rafat in. And it actually just by coincidence turned out like we were discussing it, 3 or 4 days after President Trump announced the tariffs and the market was going all wonky. So for that, it just didn't seem a great time to do the survey. And also the point was brought up that the board was about to transition a month later. So we thought, the new board should do it and maybe wait till the market settled down a little bit. But we do want to do that survey, in the coming months, relatively soon. So that's kind of my comments, but happy to take any questions and thoughts.
Director Fleshman.
I recognize that, if I may direct my questions to Mr. Vroom, I recognize that this fund represents only 7% of the amount invested. However, even though money is fungible, I raise the question as to whether it's fungible between this fund and other funds, because this is under certain requirements to be available in the event of a catastrophe. And if we invest 80% of the funds in equities, they're at a much greater risk. Even you may have some conservative equities that you're hiding away someplace, but in today's world, I'm not sure anything is conservative in those terms. And so I was really quite surprised that the Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of Environmental Quality would approve that investment ratio. And I think that just slipped by, frankly.
Well, it's kind of interesting, though, because it wasn't in the original agreement in 2006. They actually added it with a special modification in 2012. So, I wasn't here. I don't know the history of that. And
I don't know either.
But for whatever reason, someone decided back in 2012 to add this with a modification. I mean, I think the reason, I'm somewhat guessing, but I think the idea is that, higher equity mix over time gets you more growth. And,
of course,
there is more risk, but there's more opportunity for, it's kind of a risk reward thing. So I think the the goal was to get, additional growth and grow that fund, but you're right, it would have a little bit higher risk to it as well.
The fact that the primary purpose of the fund is to be available for emergencies in case of catastrophes, to repair the systems which generated these funds, that is the revitalized stream beds.
Right.
Makes me think that they would approach it with a more conservative bent, and yes, want to take care of inflation and that kind of thing, but not subject it to the risk that is represented by 80% equities investments.
Yeah. Understand the point.
Mr. Petrine.
Let me provide some context. Both of the funds, the RRF fund was created in June of 2014. The investments that exist in that fund have been the same. There have been no additional money put into those. And the 14 funds in which RA has invested the money have stayed in those funds. Now, the proportions have moved as the equity funds have increased in value. Is one of the reasons that 2 years ago it was decided to change the threshold allocations upward. So that's one thing. The CAT fund was created in August of 2020. The investments are in the same funds. The allocations are different. In fact, they're much more conservative, and certainly both the agreement with WSSI, which was created in 2012, and the investment policy, which was created in 2014, have not changed since that time. So we are being more conservative. You could say we're out of compliance with an agreement, but in point of fact, we are more conservative than is in the agreement. Another point to make, they are all level 1 assets, which our auditors have verified, which means there are deep and active markets for everything that we own, which means you can sell them tomorrow or today, as a matter of fact. Let me qualify that. Mutual funds, got to wait until the end of the day, so you have a NAV. But ETFs, the exchange traded funds, can be traded throughout the day. So you can get your money immediately. Now, anytime you make an investment, they can go up and down. You can, but let me say that they are reasonably conservative. There is only one fund. There is only one fund that is an industry sector fund, and that's REITs. And it represents a small proportion. I think it's 1.9% of the portfolio. It's minuscule because the money is minuscule, relatively. So I would not get, my hair on fire about the fact that we're investing 40% in equities and 60% in fixed income with the CAT fund. Now, that's not to say that the board should be looking at the investment policy and reviewing it. The Fiscal Committee has made suggestions over the years about perhaps reformulating it to make it a much more compact document. But heretofore, the consensus of the committee is to keep things essentially as they are. So you're investing in index funds, broad index funds, both equities and fixed income. They are available for sale immediately. The allocations are very conservative, even in today's market. And as Ed has represented, they've done reasonably well. They're not at the top of the market, but they are consistent earners. And one of the things that you should take a look at is the year-end report, where they have a graph which shows a straight line which indicates the amount of money that has been invested, and then the movement, change in value over time. And they're both way above the initial investment. So I will leave it at that for your consideration. Thank you.
Once we've wrapped this. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Vroom? Hearing none. Thank you, sir.
Didn't you designate a working group to look at this? What was the working group that you designated?
Triple RF.
That's the triple RF and
Investment.
CARF one. Yes, and that was for something else. That was for the 10-year average one. That was the capital spending.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it, though.
I remembered it and said, so just to recap, we're going to get a further follow-up on this at a future meeting with some input from Fiscal Committee on that.
That's correct.
The only thing I would say, Mr. President, when I looked at that resolution, it authorized a number of investment vehicles that are frightening. Mortgage-backed securities among them, and I'm not going to take up your time to go down the list of all the things that I saw that were authorized that made me scratch my head. There are some investments that we are making or have made, particularly overseas stock index funds, which caused me pause until I learned more about where those index funds wind up being. So I think this is an area that requires further conversation. I'm happy to have the Finance Committee do that and come back. When that conversation happens at Finance Committee, I certainly would like to be apprised of it because I'd like to hear it. I'd like to listen to that conversation.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kerr, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I agree completely, John. I mean, we said at our last meeting on this that for a few years now, we've been meaning to get to this and something always gets in the way, it seems. But, I mean, right now that resolution is 6 pages long or something. It ought to be like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
It needs to be just written big time. And that's what we're going to do that this year. We haven't got it on our schedule because you've got a budget going, but we'll get it inside of that. We're not going to wait till the end of the year. We'll start working on that.
Happy to be
And
there.
we'll come back to the board with our suggestions.
Happy to listen to that conversation.
All right, one more chance to make a comment. Matt.
So not looking for any kind of motion tonight, but just want to make sure we're super clear because there was motions at the last meeting. So one of the things that came up last meeting is to immediately begin negotiating or renegotiating the contract. The provisions of the contract that have specific splits that will obviously delay, as well, because we'll need to know what to tell those entities on the correct split. We will have the risk assessment. So what I'll do is have Ed put together a schedule that shows when the risk assessment will come. We'll work with Chairperson Kerr on when we think we can fit it into the Fiscal Committee work program and when it will likely come back to the board. And it'll be a 4 or 5 line, like here's what the schedule looks like.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to the 2024 audit. Again, Mr. Vroom, are we paying you by the presentation? Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, we're going to pause for a second. Oh, get to take a breath. And we're going to move back to Ms. Hoffman. I think I see you on camera there. I see you.
Oh, we can't hear you.
We see you, but we don't hear you.
Can we hear you?
Can she hear us?
Can you give us a sound check?
You haven't heard any of us.
Can you hear us?
Do you have your mic?
Okay.
Do you have your mic set to the right input?
Nope, she does.
She can hear us, but we cannot hear her. Oh, almost had it. Sorry, Ms. Hoffman, we're going to have to maybe try to reschedule this or touch base at a later time. Thank you.
Maybe we can get you in person. It'd be great to see you. Thank you. All right, break time's over, Mr. Vroom.
All right, my break is over. Moving on to the audit, and I'm sure you saw in the packet that we had Orbis come in and along with us, briefed the fiscal committee last week on the audit, and, they gave a unanimous approval to, recommend to the board approving the audit. So that's what we'd like to ask you to do, but happy to take any questions or feedback.
Please,
Move
Director
to
Santer.
approve the fiscal year 2024 audit, including the TCWG report and the audited financial statements.
Second.
Move has been made and seconded. Is there a comment? Or question? Director Mullinex.
Maybe just a comment. Sitting with Forbes, hearing their presentation, hearing their characterization of the controls, overall very positive outcome there. So I just wanted to reiterate that for the board. And Dave, I don't know if you would have any additional comments, but certainly in favor of accepting the results.
I will. If I did send out an email, and hopefully most folks got a chance to take a look at it, but this was an A-plus audit. Ed and his team, and David Honeywell in particular, who had to coordinate every bit of this as his controller, our controller for RA, did a great job, and a clean audit with no discrepancies at all. So it was excellent.
That's great news. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Petrine.
Sorry to be chatty-catty today, but we are at the end of the first 3-year term with Farvis, and I just want to remind the board as they put together a checklist, that's one of the items that has to be dealt with.
Their renewal,
Yes,
and their renewal is,
or for the board to choose to go out.
and their renewal is a 2-year, 1 year, 3 year, 3
3
year,
year.
always.
And this is year one.
This is the third year.
Oh, this
of
is the third
first
year.
Iteration
Okay.
of their first round.
So
Their first term is
renewal's up
ending.
in 2028, 9?
Okay.
So they would be 25, 26, and 27.
Bob, question for you. Have we had the same audit partner for the entire 3 years?
For Farvis, yes.
Okay.
All right.
But we did just change it for us from a prior auditor, right?
3 years ago.
3 years.
3 years ago. So this year we have to re-up that contract or.
Tamara Vinland, our Vineyard, has been the audit partner. We've had a change in tax partner this year, but they've been incredibly responsive. We have not had the same issues in getting things finalized as we did in the last couple of years with our prior auditors.
Good.
So, Mr. President, can I ask staff, is this on the work program to solicit bids? and
Yes, we're
come back
tracking
to
it.
us
We're
with the
just getting
contract?
this year's audit done, and then we'll start looking at that contract.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Just one thing to add, just as a reminder, this is the audit, and then next month we'll be bringing the 990 tax return to you. We're finalizing that with them. They kind of wait till the audit gets done first, and then they finalize the 990 tax return, so we expect to have that to you next month.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So wrapping that up, we're moving on to Mr. Lusk.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just as an,
We have to vote on that.
We're in the motion. Yeah.
yeah, there was
We're in the
no
midst
vote.
of the motion.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh,
All right.
I made the
So the motion was made and seconded, and comments were done. All in favor?
Aye.
That's it, unanimous of all approved. Thank you very much for.
Thank you,
the
Mr.
update.
President.
Now, Mr. Lusk.
All right, good evening, everybody. Just as an announcement, the first capital funding working group meeting will take place next Tuesday, July 1st. So we have that scheduled. It's on the calendar. As you're listening to some of this tonight, one of the items I'm hoping to take away is maybe just some questions from the board that they would like the working group to tackle over the next month or so. I've sort of compiled a list of questions just to get the working group rolling, but if you have specific items that come up tonight, I'll take those notes and we'll kick them around at the working group next week. So a couple items that are different from the first time we talked CIP a few weeks ago. The second 5 years in the CIP, so the 10-year document that you received in your packet, are all projects that staff have put together based on a number of factors. So these factors are using the reserve study as a baseline, using the condition assessments that were completed in the spring as an additional input, using staff input, and then doing our own condition assessments of assets like playgrounds and other items. So we have put together a 10-year forecast that we think jives with what needs to take place over the next 10 years. What's different from what you saw in May is that the second 5 years in May were solely based on the reserve study because we hadn't gotten to that work yet. So now we've gone through this list, we've made our 10-year listing, we think it's in a good place. Some of the things that are different from what we may have seen in the past is that we've tried to lump together location-based projects in 1 year so that we're not replacing a chlorination system at Lake Newport Pool in 2027 and then going back in 2030 and doing the pumper. We're trying to just put all these things together. You know, this is something that staff is asking me for. They're saying, Pete, we've been trying to get this done for years. Can we try to figure this out? Another item that you see may be different than years past is we've put 3 different bathhouse renovations into the CIP. So instead of listing something like kitchens and cabinets and countertops, we've put money in to go in and sort of gut the bathhouse and redo it. Just thinking kind of ahead that maybe we should start to hit these bathhouses as we go. If you really remember the pool's condition assessment, most of the items were pool house based. They weren't really pool based. We've gone through and made a bunch of other adjustments as well on the playgrounds tot lots item. Staff conducted their own condition assessment. There were notes in the document sort of reformatting or relisting playgrounds and tot lots based on years that we think they should be replaced. That's sort of very different than what was in the reserve study. We've also identified some for expansion based on some comments we heard in the last meeting. So I know there's a lot of conversation to be had about funding models. Those funding models were included in the materials. I'm not sure how deep we need to get into that conversation this evening because the working group is kicking off on Tuesday, and that is the function of the working group. But I'm happy to answer any questions on the project listing or the funding models.
Open to questions. All right, looks like everybody's waiting for Tuesday.
Great.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Could I? Sure. Please, just a quick thought because I saw this. Stream mitigation credits that we talked about using.
Yep.
You got 2 years worth in here. Is there any reason why it's only 2?
So, yeah, it's a great question. So as we were putting this together, as you look out 3 or 4 years, there's some pretty major dredgings that will take place. So we put that in as a placeholder just to show what it could look like. So I think the working group, one of our topics should we recommend years of spending? Good question. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. I believe Director Juszczyk has just entered the room. It's good to see you. Thank you. Moving on to item K.
Well, do we come back now to 36 and say that we're taking it off from the prior list?
I thought we were planning to wrap that up all at the end.
Yeah.
The 36 and 27, I think.
President Johnson?
Yes.
I believe Director Farrell is referencing a budget suggestion that came in through the budget suggestion process, not the CIP list that's in your packet.
Correct.
Tonight.
This is the umbrella? This is the umbrella issue. This is the umbrella issue?
Right, and so we don't need to have it as
Right.
a capital item because it would be rolled into another item that is in excess of 25,000. We don't need to act anymore. We can take it off the list.
Does that require a motion? Mr. Champ?
I think we can just.
Okay.
I'd ask unanimous consent just so the record's clear to remove item 36 from the list.
I don't see any difficulty. You're good to go.
Separate but related, just in case we're having any other technical issues, can we get a sound check with Director Juszczyk? Because we cannot hear
No, we
her.
cannot hear you in the room, Jennifer.
Yeah,
Looks like the problem may be on our end.
we need the voice of God to help.
Sean, if you're listening, if you can help us out here, it looks like we are having problems hearing people in the room.
You can hear us though, Director Juszczyk.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to, actually the interest of time, and so no one has to watch us just sit around letting things get fixed, I suggest we take a 10-minute break. Thank you.
I can. Hello? Yay! Awesome.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us while we dealt with our technical difficulties. We now have audio in the room from Zoom, and Director Juszczyk can now be a full participant in our meeting. So welcome back to the meeting.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to start with item K, public education on TSA apartment. And if you'll just bear with me for a second while I have a little bit of... there we go. Mr. Cummins, this is yours. He has got the head. You've got the header on the agenda. However, Director Farrell?
So, did you have something you wanted to say about this? Good. I didn't want to. It helps if I turn my mic on, eh? So this came up a couple of months ago, and it resulted in a 4-4-1 vote based in a representation that one board member was actually engaging in this exercise that I'm about to describe. And it turns out that that was not the case. So where this comes from is about 5 months ago, I was at a fundraiser on the other side of the river, and I had my visa and I had my shots, so I was okay. In which I interacted with the head of the apartment division of a particular developer who owns apartments in Reston that are subject to the covenants and who pay the assessments for the apartments that they own. And I described to him the situation wherein there are something like 3,000 units that have been approved for development that aren't members of the association and aren't paying the assessment. And he was stunned. And he asked me, could we get him more information about that situation? So I came back here and said, look, we need to educate our apartment owners on the impacts of those 3,000 units on the money that they pay us every year. Bob Petrine and I did a back of the envelope kind of impact. And the impact of having those 3,000 units not being part of RA increases our assessment by something on the order of $120 per unit per year. That applies to all of the people here on the board, and it applies to the people who own the assessments. That 120 is a little soft. I'd like to pin that number down, but it's in that order of magnitude. And what I think the motion I made that night was to direct the staff to develop educational materials to explain to the current RA apartment owner members the impact on their assessments of 3,000 units in the TSA not contributing to the RA budget, our assessments. As I said, that motion failed 4-4-1, but I don't know to what degree that was premised on the fact that there was representation that conversation was already happening. Subsequent to that time, we found out that conversation wasn't happening at all. So based on my experience with the owner of this one set of apartments, it seems to me that the other owners of the apartments, we need to brief them and to develop materials to be able to educate them on the net impact of the failure to comply with the comprehensive plan on the part of the TSA members. For those of you who may not follow that, in the comprehensive plan, it says that all new apartments, or dwelling units, excuse me, all new dwelling units in the TSA should either join Reston Town Center Association or join Reston Association. And that language has been in the comprehensive plan since, I want to say 2013. And it was kept in the comprehensive plan since then. So the object here is to develop, a short paper that explains to the apartment owners and maybe individualize it to the apartment owners, each apartment complex, what the impact of that, I'm going to call it an exemption, is on their annual bill, much like we know what the impact is on our annual bill. It's not a complicated calculation, but if we ever hope to convince a change in practice on the part of the county, we have to start by getting allies. And one way, you're not going to get an ally if you don't explain the circumstances to them. So my motion would be to direct staff to develop materials to share with the current RA apartment owners on the impact on their assessment bill of the failure to have the other 3,000 unit owners part of RA.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Dr. Flashman seconded. Comments and questions?
I guess my question would be, we do the education, they get the information, so what? What happens next?
Well, anytime you want to try and make a change in public policy, you know, and I know, that it takes multiple educational opportunities or attempts in order to get somebody to take action. And so this would be the first step, ultimately, in getting action taken and hopefully persuade the county to enforce the comp plan with regard to any rezonings that happen. For those of you who aren't following it, we have 10 or 15 site-specific plan amendments coming up, and that they will be translated into zoning applications. Many of them have multifamily units proposed as part of their project. And we need to, we need to, as those projects come through, to comply with our established policy, this board's established policy, and the comprehensive plan, that all of the new TSA residential dwellings should become part of RA, so that we, as RA members, are not subsidizing the development, the residential development in the TSA.
Any other comments? Dr. Flashman.
Your motion, sorry. Your motion requests that staff prepare some information that could be presented to the various developers. Or not the developers, but the owners of the existing apartments
in RA.
But it doesn't say that they should go forward and meet with them for that purpose.
Not yet. They may not, they may look at the material and go, we don't care. But they can't make that decision without that information.
No, what I'm asking you is, your motion only asks for the information to be prepared. It doesn't say it should be delivered to those owners.
Well, that would be the next step. First, I'd like to see the information prepared.
You want to see the information before it's set up?
I think the board should be looking at it before
Okay.
it's shared
Just
with
to
the apartment
clarify.
owners. That's right.
And
Dr. Mullenix.
maybe I'm going to seek staff reaction to this, and maybe my question is, the motion speaks to developing educational materials to give to existing apartment owners.
I'm going to ask you to bring the mic a little
Sure.
closer. Thank you.
The motion speaks to developing education materials to give to existing apartment owners that are already within a RA, already paying dues. I guess, to what extent does staff already have ongoing relationships with apartment owners where they understand the what they're paying into and what benefits they're getting, and to what extent are staff having conversations around other units or other buildings that are not paying into RA?
I'll try to answer. I know Director Perry has had several conversations with her constituents as the apartment owner, so I can't speak to, that part of it. We have had some conversations with existing apartment owners because we've become aware that frequently renters are unaware of the benefits of being an RA member. So we have tried to become far more forward-leaning in helping them understand that they share the same member benefits as a single-family homeowner, for example. So we're trying to get more RA members signed up for recreation passes, discounts for camps, all the things that they just didn't know, as a renter. And part of that is working through management offices, and the parent companies. It would not be uncommon for an employee of a development company that owns properties all over the state or all over the place to not know all the details. They see spreadsheets that show common area maintenance charges, other sorts of financial expenditures and so forth. I would say it is our experience with people that are boots on the ground, that would be the apartment managers, the people responsible for leasing rates, the leasing agents. They know because they're in a competitive market situation. And so when their CAM charges are different, building by building, they know what's going into their rent and what the profit margins are. But of course, there are development officers and people that are not local that wouldn't necessarily know all those details.
And that's who Mr. President, that's who the target market would be, not the property owner on site, but like the fellow I talked to with the other organization, he's in charge of multiple apartment projects. And so he was completely unaware of the circumstance that his projects or his complexes in Reston face. So that it's not, I'm not trying to educate the property manager who's on site or the leasing agent on site, but at a higher level. And that's who the target audience would be.
Any other comments or questions? Before we move on to a vote, I just want to interject. I'm not pushing either way on this. I am saying, however, I would, and I spoke to Director Farrell about this, so this isn't a surprise to him. I would appreciate it if we could hold off on this. And I say this because Director Perry is not with us tonight, and she has a perspective on this. And I think as the apartment owner's representative, it would behoove us to hear her perspective before we voted in the affirmative on this motion. However, the motion has been made and has been seconded, so we are going to open it to a vote. So, all in favor? 1, 2, 3 in favor, and against. 2 against, and then abstention is 1. So 3, 2, 1.
Motion carries.
No, it fails.
Motion
3-3.
does not carry.
No, it carries. 3, 2, 1. There's only 6 people here. It's who's voting?
3-3.
Who's present and voting?
Let the parliamentarian, please. Thank you.
Our bylaws read a affirmative action by the majority of the directors present. We have 6. A majority would be 4. Got to be 51%, John, to be a majority. You have 50% for, you have the absentee ballot, or not absentee ballot, abstention is treated as a no.
All right. The motion fails. Thank you very much. We're moving to item L, executive session. Someone do the motion.
I so move.
All right, moved and seconded.
Second.
We've moved and seconded to go into executive session. All in favor?
Do not specify for what purpose?
For the purposes, for personnel purposes and consultation with counsel on legal matters.
Thank you.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 in favor and against? 1 against and abstaining. 1 abstention. Thank you very much. Executive session.
This is Austin Mayhew, Capital Projects Manager for Reston Association, here to give you a Q2 Capital Projects update. The Capital Improvement Program for 2025 includes 59 total approved projects. 22 projects are currently scheduled, 15 projects are in progress, and 22 projects have been completed or purchased. Key projects completed to date will be described in the following slides. And it's good to note that all vehicles and equipment for the 2025 year have been purchased. The first project to note is the Autumnwood Pool plaster renovation project. The accumulated plaster in the pool was chipped out and hauled away. Tile and coping were also removed, and a new white coat, tile and coping were put down, providing a new smooth surface for users to utilize. The project was budgeted at $250,000 and completed for $232,000. Other 2025 pool projects include work at Uplands Pool, North Hills Pool, and Lake Newport Pool. A super umbrella was added to the upper wading pool area to provide shade for users. The Lake Newport main pool and wading pool chlorination systems were replaced, and the Uplands pool pump room filtration system and chlorination systems were replaced. Uplands was converted from liquid chlorine to a erosion-style puck system to streamline with all other pools at Reston Association. Another project that we're excited to announce is nearing completion is the Barton Hill Tennis renovation. The Barton Hill Tennis Court project is at 95% completion since the Q1 update. The rain garden behind the courts has been installed, and contractors got back out to install the color coat and lines. Final items to note are the contractor final punch list, windscreen installations, court signage, and fixtures. Following these items, the courts will be open to the public, and a grand opening is planned for summer of 2025. The next project that we're excited to kick off is the Hook Road ball field renovation. This is phase 1 of the full site plan, and WeWork Construction Management Incorporated has been selected for phase 1 of the project. Currently, RA staff are awaiting VDOT construction entrance permit prior to establishing the pre-construction meeting with Fairfax County staff, our on-call engineer, Rinker Design Associates, and RA staff. Staff anticipate beginning this work on the project in Q3 of 2025. Two dredging projects were funded in the 2025 Capital Improvement Program, the Lake Ann Canal Dredging Project and the Lake Thoreau West Cove portion. Lake Services Incorporated was selected for the Lake Ann Canal Dredging Project and completed the work in late April. About 1,200 cubic yards of dredging spoils were removed from the canal via long-reach excavator. Staff plans to kick off the West Cove portion of Lake Thoreau dredging in late summer or early fall of 2025. Another exciting project we have is the Lake Thoreau Observation Dock. This can be found right behind the pool at Lake Thoreau, and it was funded in 2025 for the amount of $85,000. Reston Association's on-call engineer, Rinker Design Associates, has provided RA staff with a conceptual design of the dock as an as-is replacement with upgraded deck material and railings. Staff will be on site on July 9th for a community input session to help determine any other scope of work that the dock may need. We're excited to kick off the design and engineering phase of the Lake Newport tennis renovation. The project will be broken into 3 funding years, with the first being this year, the design and engineering portion, community engagement, and permitting. Then in 2026, we'll finish up design and start construction, and we'll finish construction sometime in 2027. Before we dive into Reston Association's communication plan, which was carried out last month, I'd like to give a big thanks to all members, residents, board members, and staff who came out to give their input on the future of these courts. It's going to help us a lot driving the scope of work for what we're going to do here. The first community engagement method we carried out was an on-site signboard activity and Q&A session. 17 people showed up to the Lake Newport tennis courts to participate in the activity. The table in blue describes the amenities on site that meant the most to the people participating, and their results follow. So here we see the breakdown of the signboard activity. We provided choice, which was the sections on the signboards, and their counts are to the right of each bullet point for how many people put dots on them. And the write-ins were the results from the Post-it notes that members wrote in and gave to us. This section gives a breakdown from the results of the online survey. I want to thank everybody who participated in this. We had a lot of responses. And to give you a quick breakdown, the most popular items were court resurfacing, upgraded lighting, and water bottle filling stations, with the least being EV charging stations. The next steps in the design and engineering phase of this project are to provide findings and comments to Rinker Design Associates, the RA consultant for the project. And then in Q4, we will host a September meeting for a final community engagement meeting, finalize the design with Rinker Design Associates, and then develop an RFP for contractors to bid on. Other tennis projects to note are the tennis courts at North Shore, which will receive new color coat and crack repair, and the multipurpose courts at Lake Newport, Ivy Oak, and Coltsbrook, which will receive color coat and crack repair as well. Tennis Courts Inc. is under contract to complete the work at these courts, and staff anticipate completion by the end of Q3 or early Q4. The Lake Ann Sidewalk project was funded in the 2024 Capital Improvement Program in the amount of $35,000. The purpose of the sidewalk was to connect North Shore Drive to the Lake Ann parking lot area. In 2024, a property line survey was completed and determined that 75% of the property on the pathway is not an RA property. RA and LARCA staff are working together to get a sidewalk added in the area. If you have any questions or comments on any of the slides that were presented or anything else about the Capital Improvement Program, feel free to contact us at capitalprojects@reston.org or at the hotline 703-435-6556. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes,
I move that the Resident Association Board of Directors certifies to the best of each member's knowledge that only those matters appropriate for executive session of a contractual nature involving personnel matters or involving consultation with counsel were discussed or considered by the board during executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous of all in attendance.
Mr. President, I move that the board authorize staff to bind the insurance policies as presented in executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments or questions? Hearing none, here's a vote. All in favor? Unanimous of all in attendance.
Mr. President, I believe that Director Jurchak has the next motion.
I move to direct the CEO to immediately begin work with the Fiscal Committee on researching and providing a recommendation to the board for a corporate insurance broker to be approved by the RA board no later than February 2026 for the 2026-2027 insurance renewal.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Comments or questions? All in favor? That's unanimous of all in attendance.
I move to defer the volunteer interviews of Karen Antoine, Margaret Perry, Dorothy Hoffman, and Greg McKinless
To a date certain?
to the July 10th agenda.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Unanimous of all in attendance. All right,
Is there anything else?
we have new business. The draft
President?
July 10th.
Yep. I move to adopt the draft agenda for the July 10th meeting as published in the materials for tonight's meeting with the change of moving item K, the Kathy Hudgens Center MOA revisions, to after the executive session of the July 23rd meeting. 24th, I misspoke, to the July 24th meeting.
I have an edit. We have under consent calendar, maintenance covenant agreement, it's also listed as an L, so I didn't know if we needed this twice on the agenda. Is this a consent matter or does?
I would recommend we leave it on consent. We'll put it in the packet, and if we want to pull it off, you can pull it off.
Okay.
Okay.
So then we can strike item L?
Correct.
Correct.
L and K.
Yes.
K moves till after executive session,
Of the July.
24th.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I'd accept all of those, I'd ask unanimous consent to accept all of those amendments.
Any objection? Seeing none?
I think we're ready for a vote on the agenda.
Oh, hold on.
We have an objection.
Don't we need volunteer interviews because we missed the one?
They're in here.
They're in there. Item E.
It is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
Item E. Oh, I was looking below the blue. Okay, we're good. I'm good. Thanks.
All right, thanks. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous of all in attendance.
Mr. President, I'd like it noted that we're ready to adjourn at 9:45 and that 3 of our members aren't here. And I don't know if there's a causal connection, but I'll just leave it there.
I would like to add that we have seen that on multiple occasions with multiple members of the board. And that that correlation does not necessarily lead to causation.
That was my point.
All right.
Touche.
On that note, I'd like to adjourn the meeting at 9:44 PM.